of outflow. Whenever you send in,
Speaking is on.
whenever you send in a recommendation for an outflow, we will categorize them in 3 categories. We would ask you to do the same. The first category is the easiest. That's a grant. So grants go to other nonprofits, NGOs, nonprofits seeking 501c3, nonprofits that aren't 501c3. They all are the same to us. Whether domestic or international, it's okay. Once you make the recommendation, we go through our due diligence internally. We make sure that they are who you say they are, and then we make a gift. We prefer to send a wire, but we can send a check.
And can you send crypto?
We can absolutely send crypto. All right.
We will always be on that end of the spectrum.
That's fine. The more you do up front in your own due diligence, the quicker the gift happens and the more it helps us. All right. So the second major category is investments. Like any other charity in the United States, we too are allowed to invest in for-profit companies. We can buy stocks. We can buy artwork. We can buy real estate. We can buy gold. We can buy
crypto.
I mean, you name an asset, we can buy it and hold it inside of your DAF. Now, when I say hold it, I don't mean physically hold it. So if there's a gold locker in South Africa, then as long as it's titled to us properly, we hold it on your DAF's behalf. If someone wants to donate, let's say, a mining machine, the mining machine doesn't have to be moved to the United States. It can stay where it is. It's just we take title to it.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Wherever it may be in the world, we take title to it. In between, we can invest in bonds, ETFs, mutual funds. The for-profit caveat is we cannot purchase more than 25% of any one for-profit entity. So when you think about their cap table, the SDG Impact Fund, on behalf of your DAF, cannot own more than 25% of that one company. We can own 100% of bonds. They're not on the cap table, so those are fine. Now, corporations, we can own up to 99% of a corporation, but it must be gifted to the DAF. It cannot be purchased. And there is a technical difference, but it's significant in terms of how we define it on our side. All right. So those are 2 major categories. And in between those 2 categories, investment and grant, sit what's called an MRI, mission-related investment. Now, investment is sort of a misnomer in that word, in that when we think about the word investment, we think about return. Well, return is not necessary with an MRI. And an MRI is very loosely defined. It is essentially a for-profit type of investment where we may or may not ask for a return. We could, let's say, loan a company $100,000 and recover that $100,000. But if we lose it, that's okay. It's fine. And we categorize it as an MRI. Now, the litmus test for that company is your company better be doing something that lends itself towards charitable cause. For instance, you hire former prisoners in an effort to lower recidivism. You hire disabled veterans, or your company is a restaurant, and with your surplus, you give it to soup kitchens. Whatever that might be, I mean, it's very hard not to fit within the 17 SDGs. That really should be the ultimate test. If it fits there, we're pretty much good with it. All right?
Can I interrupt and just add something that might be collaborative?
Please.
And on the nonprofit side, I just want to open up the possibility that we consider another jurisdiction for the entity that interplays between the SDG Impact Fund DAF and the nonprofit or the for-profit, pardon me, the for-profit aspect. I'd like to specifically suggest that we consider countries like Ireland in the spin-off and for-profit aspect that comes about from Giveth's activities. There's, there is business activities that come from some projects, and a great location to consider is the country of Ireland. It has the jurisdictional requirements that Giveth wants because of its friendly aspects to its decentralized finance and how the government and the whole country has responded to decentralized finance. So it also has an international tax planning, or how do I say, an international financial planning advantage with the banking system, and specifically relating to digital distributed ledger assets. So I just wanted to add that into the mix, that we want to take advantage of the jurisdictional excellence of certain countries in relation to the for-profit activities that might come about as a result of how we structure this DAF.
So that's a great point, and I'm familiar with Ireland and those policies for various reasons. But I would tell you, at the DAF, we are indifferent to the for-profit activities that we may be related to what you do. We don't comment on it. We're not a part of it. So whatever you want to do in Ireland is up to you.
I'll tell you right now, I have no intention of doing any for-profit anything. So it's just like,
I just want to say that while I understand the point, it's not something that we get ourselves into. You tell us where to make a gift for an MRI, and we make a gift for the MRI. It's just that simple.
okay.
But I understand the point. So the third major category is what we call contractual obligation. So if you think about
so there are grants and investments, and then MRI is like a subcategory of investments, and now there's a third one.
Right, sort of in between. MRI is sort of in between. I wouldn't say it's sub. It just sits in sort of that no man's land in between investment and grant.
Okay.
But it is a separate schedule for us, so we have to define it whenever we report back to the IRS. We do that once a year, so it's not overly cumbersome. All right, so the third category is contractual obligation. And contractual obligation are all of those operational expenses that you would assume any business would have. Charities also have them. Advertising, marketing, legal, compensation, website, domain, all those. There's probably 21 or 22 categories. Unlike other DAF structures, we afford our DAF sub-accounts access to our balance sheet. Meaning, if we are invoiced, we will pay those expenses on behalf of your DAF. But the invoice has to come to the DAF. It has to be the name of your DAF, care of SDG Impact Fund. Now, with contractual obligation, we cannot, will not reimburse individuals. And we cannot make grants to individuals. We can pay contractual obligations to individuals. We can pay contractual obligations to companies. That also includes travel and entertainment and all those other things. Now, as long as it's in your fund, we'll pay the invoice.
So you can pay a contract to an individual for a salary.
Yes.
But you can't. But you can't pay for their plane ticket.
We can.
Oh, we can.
You can.
We would have to buy it on their behalf.
Yes.
They couldn't purchase it and then submit a, hey, I paid for this already, reimbursement.
Okay. So no reimbursements, but you can pay it and you can do it in.
Correct. So those are three major outflow categories, and as long as it fits in one of those categories, and we haven't come across one that doesn't, then you're good to go.
Wow. So you guys are like an all-service charity admin service almost. It feels like.
Pretty much.
Like if you just are good people and you want to do good work, just like join in and we'll do the admin for your charity.
Yep.
You guys are fucking saints.
So you may disagree in a couple seconds here. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I understand.
So,
you have to take a cut to keep running, right?
So our admin fee, and it's really advantageous for the donors. Our admin fee is 5% flat. However, for every new dollar that comes in, but we do not charge a fee for growth, for interest.
Wow.
So,
So the 5% fee is on the money when it comes in. So if I donate if someone donates one Bitcoin and it's worth 10,000,
correct.
Then you guys get 5%. But if it grows to 20K, you don't get any more.
correct.
You guys are seriously. Are you running a charity here?
I'm trying to make this difficult, Brian, but it's not working.
Yeah, you
I'm about to throw in the towel. So I don't know, Brian, if you want to add anything, or maybe we should pause for some clarifying questions.
Honestly, this is clearly not the first time you've given this talk. You've been very clear. I don't think I have any clarifying questions. I definitely have specific questions that I asked at the beginning. I think everything's very clear.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add in is once you, I'll say, interface with a DAF and your DAF and begin to explore what you can do with it, as Tony always said, let us guide and say what is permissible or not, or what is possible or not. And we might arrive at that together, right? We're not going to presume, and that's the thing, we're not presuming to be experts in the 17 SDGs. We're not presuming to know how to accomplish those or attain those. We're not presuming to be experts in blockchain technology, right? We're not presuming to, and we're not saying that we are. What we're saying is we're damn fine DAF administrators, as well as heart-centric stewards of this tool. And we're using this as a way for other projects and people to interface into this resource that has largely been kept on the shelf or away from heart-centric, project-oriented solutions providing people and projects, really. Because largely DAFs have been used by the ultra-wealthy, and it's their personal charitable giving account, or by a university, and it sits as sort of a university endowment model. This is the next, I'll say, evolution of this DAF ecosystem at providing this layer. And we're seeing more and more of the, where has this been? Where has this been? That's been around for 90 years. It started in 1931. It's not a new ecosystem. It's just, this is that evolution of this in terms of people stewarding it. So Tony's done, obviously, he's been doing this for a while. He's been a marathon runner many times over and stewarding this vision, and the energy's building for it. So the other element I'll add in is once you interface into the DAF ecosystem, what is now accessible to you, at least within the SDG Impact Fund, in terms of opportunities, cross-pollination of other individuals in the ecosystem, access to capital regeneration and multiplication aspects, are things that we don't want to turn the fire hose all at once, right? These are, we can go as deep as you want, but there's a lot to sort of process and consume. And so these will come out in conversations as much as you want. So
in general, what I heard is that if we try to do something creative, we should talk to you first.
If you say, hey, we've got this asset over here, we'd like to do this with it and be able to generate this type of return. How do we do that? Perfect. Let's have a conversation about it, right? Okay. Don't limit yourself because you're not familiar with what can be possible through a DAF, because it is a learning curve, right? So let us look at us as sort of the Sherpas and steward of what's possible using the DAF ecosystem. And you're sitting on this side saying, I have all this knowledge and access to either information or data or finances or capital or potential capital. How do we use this together? That's where the magic happens, by bringing those together.
Okay.
So when you're an expert in what you do and ask the questions of, is this possible? Or we've got this, what do you think? Then we can riff in that space between of what the potentiality is together.
Okay.
And and Tony will be the paramount compliance guidance in that, right? So he'll say, here's what's permissible by the IRS. If it fits within that, let's run. Here's the provenance. Here's where we can pull these data points together to ensure that we can do it.
Okay. Okay. So for Giveth,
Griff, can we just go down that road a little bit with Tony and Brian, just about compliance and interface with the IRS? Part of Giveth's project here on this legal team is to get our arms around the risk that founders and participants in the Giveth ecosystem are having. And, the legal entity and the process of forming a legal entity and using the DAF is a process somewhat of assessing risk. And as you know, the primary risk there is with the IRS. So can we talk a little bit around well, maybe just your success in dealing with philanthropic organizations and compliance with the IRS, reducing risk for the founders and organizers of those philanthropic organizations so they can sleep at night?
Well, I'm thinking of where we begin. I think first and foremost, in my now 13 years in working under IRS compliance and restraints, never once received a phone call, never once received a letter of concern, and never once received a complaint. So I think we can begin there. And then beyond that, I'm having a tough time understanding what area of compliance you're alluding to. Because our role is really, really simple. We take in a gift and then we administer. So give me an example of a compliance concern you might have with founders.
Well, just a very quick example will be look-through policies that the IRS has in relation to structures and philanthropic giving. The regulations that the IRS has around not-for-profit organizations are designed to allow philanthropic giving to proceed, but they're also designed to avoid people abusing the DAF and 501c3s. And so transactions can take place which are in a specific philanthropic structure, and the IRS will just simply say, no, that's just you set that structure up, but here's really what happened. And so look through kind of provisions in the Internal Revenue Service Code can get a philanthropic organization in a situation where they did a transaction and it was considered to be actually the transaction of specific individuals and therefore subject to tax and triggering a tax event. A taxable event is what we're avoiding here altogether with the structuring and investing through the SDG Impact Fund.
Correct.
We're trying to reduce the risk for the parties involved in a whole range of transactions of creating a taxable event in the eyes of the IRS. And so the first example would be the look-through provisions that the IRS has in relation to not-for-profit entities. And, just talk around that a little bit because, people will try and abuse this vehicle, and they have tried to abuse it with your organization, I'm sure. So I guess I'll just...
I would push back a little bit on that. So there are a set of rules that guide both gifts coming in and then the three categories for outflow. There are a couple other sort of caveats. We do not make grants to individuals. I think I shared that earlier. We do not support political action committees or political campaigns. We do not and cannot make gifts to private foundations. Outside of that, I'm not sure how we could put ourselves in compliance hard way or harm's way if we're simply following our guidelines. Now, if someone says something that is outside of our guidelines, I'll be the first person to say no. But I think reputationally, I've not confronted that yet. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I'm not gonna.
So,
I'm not
so you don't interact with individuals, or you don't reimburse individuals.
We don't grant to individuals.
No grants to individuals. You do not support political campaigns. And what was the third one?
To private foundations.
We don't
can't.
private foundations. We can't.
But private foundations, so interesting little side point to this, private foundations in the United States are mandated to have a 5% annual distribution. It's about 5% where they're required to distribute 5% of their total growth of that year. A DAF can be a qualified recipient of that. So you could actually have a DAF sit tandem to a private foundation or be the recipient of that outflow. And that satisfies that minimum distribution. Same thing from a IRA, right? Or sort of from a retirement account. There's minimum distributions that are required to come from retirement accounts. The DAF can actually serve as that qualified recipient as a charity. The one point I think, I'll put a high arching one is the DAF provides a layer of compliance, I'll say security for the donor advisors, right? Because there's really nothing the donor advisors can do in general.
So there's donors and donor advisors. What's a donor?
Yeah. Perfect. So let's say you created a DAF and called it the Giveth Foundation, right?
I need to go back. So wait. Yeah. So if we create an organization under you, it would effectively be a DAF.
It is a DAF.
It is a DAF.
So you're a DAF and we're a DAF.
Yeah, that's
correct.
Why
the nomenclature. Yep.
Yeah, it's the nomenclature.
Okay, that's cool.
We are the sponsoring organization. The SDG Impact Fund is what has been given I'll call it the power to be a donor advised fund and to create donor advised funds underneath of us, right? In essence, in our ecosystem. So you can think of whatever gets created inside of this ecosystem. You could call it a giving fund. You could call it a project fund, right? To give it a different set of nomenclature. What you are precluded from doing is you, as say the Gaia, if you create a DAF, you cannot turn around and grant that power to somebody else, right? You would not be able to spin up another DAF for somebody else. That is what has been granted to the SDG Impact Fund, right? So different layers of that.
Okay, so effectively, you guys would be creating a new legal entity for us.
No, you're in essence a ledger inside of our ecosystem.
Okay, so we would just become part of the SDG Impact Fund.
Correct.
In essence, yeah.
And
so
and our current legal entity, how does that connect?
It really doesn't. There's a firewall there. It's really individuals who are controlling the DAF, not the company.
Okay.
This happens to be the same name. That's the only crossover there.
Okay, so we would effectively just be joining you as individuals, and then when donors donate to us, sorry, am I breaking up?
No.
Okay, when donors donate to us, they would be donating to you,
Correct.
and then saying to send the money to us, effectively. And then we would then administer that money, or we would ask you to administer that money to the way that we want.
Correct. So we will have a setup whereby, and we'll have talked about this beforehand. So let's say if you've got $1 million coming in, then it's either sitting there or you're administering it in such a way that you have projects that it's going to go to.
Yeah.
The correct flow is donated asset in, it sits, on our platform, and then you tell us where it needs to go, whether it's the same day or a month from now or a year from now. And unlike private foundations, we have no minimum distribution requirement. Assets can sit in the DApp forever, and they're never forced to be given away.
Okay, so let's run through a scenario. We want to do a fundraiser, and some people want a tax receipt, some people don't.
Correct.
Right? A lot of people just have crypto. They don't need tax receipt. So they send the people who want a tax receipt. You know, we say, hey, if you'd like a tax receipt, push this button, right? And if you don't need a tax receipt, push that button. If they push the tax receipt button, the money goes through you. You would end up holding it for maybe a second and take the 5%, and then you could send that money directly to something we already automated and worked with you to set up exactly where it's going and with the intentions and all the things.
Now, the major caveat there is we can only tax receipt U.S. citizens or individuals outside the U.S. who have U.S. tax liability.
Currently.
Okay.
Currently.
And we're working really, really hard on affiliates around the world who will grant us tax deductibility in their country of origin, and we'll just have to pay them a fee for that pass-through.
Okay. And then, okay, that's cool. And then if we, there's no problem of having both options, right? That doesn't offend you guys.
Yeah, that's
not at all.
Okay.
That's your discernment,
Yeah.
your prerogative on if you want that optionality, right?
Most of our people are not in the U.S., so but it's cool. Okay, and so then the other side would be if they donate, can we give them a token in return? Is that okay? Would that be okay? Let's say that they donate, and then we send, when they donate, they actually also receive a token. Let's say it's a token of value, and let's say it's not. Both options, but would that still be considered a donation or not really?
It can never have value.
Okay, so if the token never has value, then it's okay. Like it'd be like a digital receipt.
Right. So, or like we use the PBA PBS example. So if you give a gift to PBA, then they'll give you a mug.
Yeah.
Or a T-shirt. Or let's say you go to a benefit dinner, you pay $1,000 for the table, then you guys take dinner.
Yeah.
Right. So in those scenarios, yes, but the donor can never receive anything of value for their gift.
Okay, so if we give them a token that can never be sold, but it gives them access to some like a video chat room, or gives them access to what if that token gives them access to invest into another project? Would that be okay?
Well, so it would. So let me describe it this way. If you are a donor to, let's say, a major college or university, are you invited into private rooms where only you and the other donors are in that room? Absolutely. Okay. Are there deals being done in that room between those donors?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, you have to sort of logically walk backwards through what we're doing. Just because it's on a list doesn't make it any different in a good way, right? So
think of
we'll come to you. What you do with the list outside of us, that's totally up to you. We have nothing to do with that. Only thing is we can't advertise that you're getting something of value. You make a gift, and then you go on a list.
Yeah, that's exactly what we plan on doing. People who make gifts, they go on a list. We do count how much gifts they gave, like it's a list with quantity,
Sure.
but it's a non-transferable token, so they can't make money with it. You can't
Right.
sell it.
Yep.
It has no value.
That's the key.
Okay.
I would look at that
And we
as
don't administer that. We don't administer. We have no relationship with what you do with the list.
Okay.
I would look at it as if, if those tokens are being used as your digital invitation token in order to get access to a room, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the old days, you make a gift to the Franklin Institute or something, and then you got your invitation to a, private gala, right? And it's your invitation, and you can't transfer it, right? It's your name on it. You can show up. That's it. I would look at that as if you're keeping that sort of in that vein of an ERC20 token or whatever it is, that is hey, here's a token. If you possess this, it's to you, it's non-transferable, and it allows you access here. There you go. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds great. And so how would we go through the process of studying? Oh, I guess I have one more important question. Okay. So let's say that we create a website where people can donate. We accept donations, and then we use those donations to build this website. We pay devs, we pay right? And then people start using that website, and something goes wrong. I don't know. Someone goes and they try to send money to an address, but they screw up and mistype the address, and they donate, and the money disappears. Would the people, as long as the funds came through your DAF, the people who built the website wouldn't be liable, per se? Or how does
Tony, I guess we're gonna have to think of them as a contracted entity,
Correct.
right, to process payments, right? So in essence here, we'll look at it this way. Gaia Giveth would, in essence, we look at you guys as you are providing a payment rail system, right? And maybe it's only for your DAF. Maybe it's for the rest of the ecosystem, but let's just use your specific DAF for now. And we, as the SDG Impact Fund, looking at the code base, understanding how the flow works, go, yes, this is compliant, right, with the IRS, with their system, where a donation can come in, and then somebody can say, I'd like a donation to go out, and here's the form, boom, 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 boom. And it obviously has to pass through our crypto account before it can go out, right? So in that model and in that flow, if something goes awry, meaning, let's say an end user puts in the wrong coordinates, the akin would be if somebody gave us the wrong wire information.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's the liability would not be on you as the contracted service provider, and then if it would rest on anybody, it may be on us. But even then, it's end user, right? Now, if it is some code flaw that's in there, that's getting really down into technical weeds. I'm trying to think through that one though, Tony. It's like, it's in essence like if MasterCard messed up a payment, right? Or if Visa messed up a payment.
That's true. And I'm also looking at it because we're a charitable organization. Ultimately, who is hurt? The donor can never be hurt. The donor made the gift, and that's it.
Yeah.
If anything, the charity is hurt.
Yeah.
And then the charity in that situation would look the other way and sort of chalk that up to, allowance for doubtful accounts. So we're less concerned about that. If someone gave and they've got proof that they gave, we're going to honor their gift.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. Then, what do we need to do to get started?
Sure. Ryan?
It's 2 pieces of documentation. You literally, so going back real quick. So the difference between donor and donor advisors. So this is the nomenclature that'll come into play here. Whoever is named as, I'll use like the signatory, right? So like if you had a traditional bank account, whoever's named and has access to that is the one that can sign, right? Can basically take money out or make deposits in, or not, but in essence can make requests of the bank. In the same way, a donor advisor, think of a donor advisor as that sort of, they have the signatory authorization to make requests. We as the DAF will not heed any other requests unless it's by that signatory. And those signatories are considered the donor advisors, right? Because you are the donor advisors of those funds. Make sense? So you maintain the rights, privileges to request and recommend how those assets are to be stewarded and dispersed. So that's a donor. So a donor can be a donor advisor, right? In that regard, but not all donor advisors are the donors themselves, right? So you could have a plethora of donors giving to your DAF, but there may only be 3 donor advisors, and they are the one that are the signatories, right?
So we can have multiple signatories.
Absolutely.
And
we
then
would recommend, we would suggest for probably ease on all communication side that it's limited to a few people. So it's not like 50 people that have these abilities and we're getting pings from everywhere, because then the network gets a little muddy, right? You can have I will say this, in your hierarchical decision making matrix of how you and think of yourself think of the DAF as an organization. It's an entity, right? Or a DAO. You can think of it as a DAO, really. Mm-hmm. However you make decisions within this ethos field, you're free to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say there's 20 of you and you all have to make a vote on how funds are going to be administered or how they move. Perfect. You can do that. And then when that's tallied, you turn around to the donor advisor and say, here, make the recommendation, sign the paperwork, and then that comes to us. Now, could that be done electronically through smart contracts? I'm sure we can explore that, of how to seamlessly have that where you have keys and you have, the keys are authenticated and boom, it comes through, right? That's cutting edge stuff, which I'm loving that you guys are probably geeking out and exploring that. So
I'll tell you where the long-term dream would be to set up some sort of DAO structure that's plug and play. Maybe, but obviously it'd be great with you guys, where it's just like, hey, you want to start a nonprofit? Deploy this DAO from this website and sign this paperwork, and boom, that's it.
Yeah,
automated DAO. Oh, yeah. That's definitely a long-term dream. It's not the starting point.
It's all right.
All good.
It's all right.
But that is a long-term dream of ours, absolutely.
Yep. So in terms of getting started, then it is literally in terms of the data fields, whoever the donor advisors are, right? So whoever will be named as donor advisors, it's basically, simple KYC. Here's your name, here's where you are, email address, whatever the name of your DAF, right? So whatever you want this entity to be called, or like this sub entity, right? So this giving fund or project fund guy, call it Giveth Foundation, the Giveth Institute, sheep need socks, whatever you want to call it, you can name it that. And then there's non-necessary data, like it's not required, but it's stuff that can be thought out at a later time in terms of who's a beneficiary, right? So let's say all the donor advisors fall off the face of the earth. What's the cascade in terms of the chain of command? Right? So, and then assets, right? So if all of a sudden your entire organization and the people just disappear, what happens to the assets, right? Do they get gifted? Do they get granted to a charity? Do they roll over in the DAF? So all those like little decision-making stuff. And that's basically it in terms of the paperwork. So, and then that gets processed within 48 hours. And then the actual legal DAF entity, like inside of us, is operational. So it's a 48, 72 hours process.
Okay, that's amazing.
Oh, Tony, you're muted.
Family talk.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, so I understand I'm 2 minutes over. Does anyone need to leave? Because I do have 1 or 2 more questions.
Go, shoot it.
Okay. I want to respect your time. Okay, so then we would just go find people who want to be donor advisors. We'd have them sign up, fill out the paperwork, and then we would have a legal entity that we could build a website with, and we can build any structure underneath it, including a DAO. But whatever, for now, there would be kind of a human bridge between our governance structure and that's through the donor advisors.
Yep.
Okay, that's pretty easy. That sounds great. There was mention of a bank account. So basically, you guys could manage a bank account inside.
We do. So we are the we are the omnibus account, right? So we've got accounts at 23 different financial institutions, custodians, right? And if you need an account at a bank or at a custodian, we would open it, right? We are the entity, so we are the legal entity of record. We would open it up, and again, it's an
And
what you think.
And it's always U.S. bank accounts, and you always no.
Well, I mean, we're a U.S. entity, but we can open up accounts anywhere.
But you can only take can you take donations from anywhere or so like let's say I'm a European person, I don't need the tax receipt, but I want to send you euros.
Yeah.
You guys could take the euros and just give a tax receipt.
Yeah, we can take it there and we can take it here.
Okay. So
we have a euro receiving account right now at Morgan Stanley.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And Swiss francs?
Yeah. Morgan Stanley again. There's not much that Morgan or BofA can't carry, and if they can't take it, Fidelity certainly can.
Okay. That's pretty incredible.
Tony, could you touch on if you have a relationship for fiat to crypto in Switzerland, or if there's access to that kind of relationship? I think there are 2 banks in Switzerland that are doing fiat to digital assets, and I just wonder if you have that kind of access, so we can have that comfort.
We do. We have 2 access points. One through our CFO, and one through a United Nations relationship that is. I might get this wrong. I don't think it's tier 1. What are the levels of access? Like oh man. But anyway, our UN related relationship has what would be considered tier 1. So for 8 and 9 figure transactions, we would go through him.
Okay. So
crypto and crypto to fiat, both directions.
So then, if let's walk through this. Let's say that we accept, €100,000 donation as the Common Stack DAF, and we want to turn that into crypto and send it to a smart contract. We just give you 5% basically, and then the money goes, and ask you to send it there, and then it goes there.
Done.
And wow, that's incredible, guys. You guys are local workers. I don't know how you pull this off.
Well, I mean, think about it. We are acting as an administrative conduit for charitable work wherever it may be occurring.
Yeah. Well, it's really powerful. I have a. How do we continue this? Because I mean, I've been working in the crypto nonprofit space for 4 years. I've been pushing this. I'm very well connected with basically everyone in the Ethereum space who even sneezes a nonprofit idea, right? How do I best connect them to you guys? What's your funnel?
So I think, well, Brian is the physical funnel because of his experience and because of this connectivity that we currently have. But one of the things that we don't do is, I mean, you're not going to see us showing up in chat rooms. We're not buying a full page ad in the New York Times. It really is relationship based. It's so we would rely on you for those introductions.
Yeah.
We would also rely on you to learn who we are and what we do, and then to pick and choose sort of the good actors and leave the bad actors out, right? And just say, look, here is a vehicle. I've listened to you talk about what you want to get done. You got to meet these guys because they're where you want to be, and then we will rely on you for that introduction.
Okay. Well, Go ahead.
Griff, what I will offer is a common vision that Tony's held, that I've held, that we continue to amplify amongst ourselves. Tony saw a vision before I even knew what a DAF was, about what's possible with this thing, right? With a DAF. Most people don't know what a DAF is, and the people who know what a DAF is don't even know what it really is.
Yeah.
I'll say that to his credit of seeing the vision beyond the vision of where this structure could sit at the perfect Venn diagram overlap of philanthropy, nonprofit, and deep finance. It really does. It sits as this conduit. I've called it a universal coupler. Literally, it can couple between traditional financial markets, insane assets, blockchain technology, and then it's all inside this, and I'll call it a special economic zone. It's a tax-free special economic zone. It really is, and it provides fluidity for all the parties. What he's been waiting for. I know when I showed up, and I'm saying this, it's like match made in heaven. Like, oh, Tony, I'm an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur. This is incredible. But again, we've got this bandwidth, right? We're doing what we do really well.
Yeah.
And what I've been geeking out on recently, I know Tony is too, is the players showing up that go, I've got an incredible, and it's okay, I've got an incredible skill set. I know how to do this type of coding. I know how to do this type of programming, and I've got access to these types of people. And then all of a sudden, when those get exposed to the DAF, you can make magic. And that's one of the things I've seen coming closer and closer is you, and I'll say this as a tribute to what Jessica, as well as Help Network, right, is that, hey, good people who know how to do deep programming, that have heart-centric visions of how to change the financial landscape and nonprofit and philanthropy. And then these guys have the vehicle that, like, it's an amorphous structure, right? We can take on any structure we want, really, as long as it stays within that compliant framework. So you want to build blockchain, smart contracts, DAO, infrastructures, dashboards, interfaces, et cetera, to do this all day long. That's magical. That's how you bring philanthropy, impact investment, decentralized, quantitative, collective consciousness, and investing into, micro industries, at the drop of a hat, right? Data feedback, all those algorithms, and it's all paired to individual giving accounts. It's possible. Just takes the network architects and engineers to know how to build that, and then we provide the sort of framework, the amorphous universal coupler to do it in.
Okay, so
I look forward to the day when Ethereum's name is on the outside of a football stadium.
Yeah.
Or the name of a college,
Yeah.
right? Or a university. I mean, there's no different than John Smith giving a gift to the College of Business, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's possible, and I want to see it happen. I think we're the right entity to make it happen.
I would agree with that. I think that there's a lot of opportunity here, more than any of us know, honestly.
Sure.
And I feel like the Common Stack, we're just scratching the surface with some of these ideas, and it's very deep. When you can start creating economic systems where the issuance of money is going to fund things that actually have value, but our market economy don't give value to. Right? So we can create some kind of economic system where those things actually get rewarded, right? Not through the market economy, but through another economy.
Yes.
Pairs.
Yep.
Right? And that's what crypto does with block rewards. They fund contributions to public goods, the network itself. And I think that we can expand that into much more interesting public goods. So okay, but back on Giveth. So if we can, do you think it would be possible to make basically every donation on Giveth that wants a tax deductible receipt to be able to go through you, even if it doesn't go to us to support the platform, it goes to support some open source developer, right? And so
when it comes to our platform, it can be tax deductible given those caveats that we talked about earlier.
So it can't, the money can't go to a person.
Oh, it can.
Not from us.
What?
Not from us.
So let's say that this water bottle is a donor, right? This guy's an open source developer, and he's got a really cool project. He doesn't have a legal entity or anything. He's just a really cool project. He's making NPM packages that everyone cares about.
Perfect.
This person donates. They click the button that says, I want a tax receipt, and sends the crypto. The crypto goes to you, I guess, for a second, and then goes to this guy. 95% of it goes.
So he can be a contractor. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're not giving him a grant. We're not giving the individual a grant. We're giving him a contract.
So they would have to, before they sign up, they would have to sign up for a contract.
Well, no, I mean, they would have to invoice us for the work that they're doing and then give us the charitable follow-on, the charitable use as a follow-on. So whatever they're doing as part of that contract, then they would describe that in their invoice.
Okay, so they would need to send you an, okay, so what about this? Let's say that instead of the money just going to them, the money goes to a smart contract that says they're going to do these things. And once they've done those things, they can collect the money. Would that work?
Yes, it works.
Okay.
That works.
And could they collect the money before they do those things if it just says
if they submitted an invoice? So it's kind of like if you pay in advance for a SaaS platform, right? Like I pay for my cloud services the month before I use it. In the same way, if that contractor submitted an invoice, it could be sitting there in the queue, right? And say, hey, I have an outstanding invoice for $500 this month. And then all of a sudden the donor shows up, bing, boom, done.
Okay, right? So we could create we could automate an invoice service effectively.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And then the invoice would be sent to you, and they could get the money, and it would look, I mean, from the user experience perspective, they would just be getting the money, right? But from the
they're submitting an invoice.
They submitted an invoice when they created the request for funds. They created an invoice.
Bingo.
Okay. Very doable.
That's suffice. That's sufficient. That's absolutely, from a compliance standpoint. Yeah, I mean, in essence, I see where you're going with that. In the intake form for them, you're asking them for things in that request for fund, and that automatically populates into an invoice that gets over to us, right? So their experience is very native of, I'm putting the information, this is why I'm requesting these funds, which you would want anyway, and that gets turned into an actual invoice, right? Say on the back end, that gets submitted to the SDG Impact Fund. Boom. Yep, that would suffice. And I would also then say too, Tony, you could have that be a standing open contract, right? Until the funds arrive, right? So that could be a standing open contract that's there, right? And then as the donations come in, that can then go, maybe in a queue fashion of whoever's in the queue. It just goes down the queue of open invoices. Here's the donation that came in. Open invoice. Yep. Invoice is there. Boom. Processed. Open invoice. Yep. Processed.
Yeah. So the standing invoice would work. Oh, we lost Tony for a second.
Sorry, that's me.
All
right, keep going, guys.
Okay, let me share my screen really quick and just show you what we have here. So this is like a campaign. So this campaign could be started by a person, right? Like I started this campaign. It says what we do is the common stack, right? And then within the campaign, there are these milestones, right? Or proposals. And for instance, this would be a standing proposal. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yep.
So this standing proposal says, hey, I'm doing work for the Common Simulator project. This is what I do. Here's where I track my hours, and then people can just donate to this. And every time that, and so we could automate a system in the back end where this is them creating an invoice, right? So like here's another one. Let's say in June, Lorelei, she worked and she got this much dye, and this is what she did, right? And then we have like a reviewer system. Sometimes we have these options we track donations and we trace donations on who they came from and all this stuff. That we could just put some kind of paperwork back into this, and it would all be gravy. Okay, cool. Well, that's super easy. I assume that we'll have to have more detailed discussions on this, but this sounds incredible. This really sounds incredible because like that means that these other groups, they could use what we're doing for our own platform, and they would be effectively working for our DAF when they do anything. And we would just need to make sure that before we let them on our platform that we know them, that they're actually doing good work, right?
Yep.
Oh, can I just reiterate something that Brian told me the first time I met with him, and that is about the scalability of the DAF and the flexibility of the structure. That you can think of the DAF as a whole. Well, maybe I'll let you say it, Brian. That the DAF has a flexibility in the context that you have it. So there's a series of making sub accounts and sub DAFs, as it were. Maybe just talk to that just a second and tell
Yeah.
Griff.
So I mean, Griff. So you could in essence, and it just depends on the scope of what you want to engage in as an individual and organization. So like I had mentioned before, right now, if you spin up a sub account or a DAF or a giving or a project fund, right, let's just call it the Common Stack Foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would not legally be able to create new DAF accounts like for another individual. Now, however, you could in essence structure it so it felt like that. And we actually do this with another DAF in our ecosystem where they end up creating or sub DAF accounts get created for organizations they're working with. It's not hierarchical, right? So it's not underneath of them. But what we do on our side is we just metricize that like that, as if it was they were the organizing entity, and then there's accounts under it. But they're not doing all the servicing, right? That's still us as the SDG Impact Fund. We are still the entity of record. We're still the back office. We're still the administrators of everything. It's just for their purposes, they're talking to potential clients or potential individuals, and then they're just bringing them in to have the accounts created. But we just kind of in our brains and in our ledgers put them all in one bucket. You can white label the DAF, so that is possible. I don't know if that necessarily serves what you're doing right now, because then you in essence that you have to become entire administrators yourself on that side. And
I don't
right. So you can white label it. It is possible to do it, but then in essence you are taking on sort of that role of becoming DAF administrators. Again, we still are the omnibus in those relationships, but that takes on a whole other set of potential, I'll say, elements that you have to be responsible for.
Okay.
If that
makes sense. This sounds really cool. How do I follow up? How do I get this paperwork and where do we?
I will email you the paperwork. I can either send it PDF or DocuSign, whatever you want. It's not a problem. And then if you have any questions about that, obviously just let me know in terms of running that through. So.
Okay. This sounds amazing. I mean, I'm going to communicate it to the rest of the crew. A lot of people I have to talk to, but yeah, send me that paperwork and let's keep this ball rolling. I'm like an action guy, so let's have it.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Well, I should run. This has been incredible. You guys are true saints. I mean. I Googled DAFs a long time ago, and I thought they were really cool, but I never heard of anyone actually doing them. And it's what you're doing. You're really maximizing it. And I hope that this is the beginning of a really fruitful situation where we can get a lot of these set up. We'll see though, and I'm not going to promote it to anyone until we do it first and try it out. But it's really cool, guys. I'm really excited by this.
Awesome. Likewise.
Likewise. Okay, cool. Well, thank you, guys. Do you have my email?
Hey, guys.
We'll talk in the chat.
Yep. Awesome.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Daniel.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, Frederick.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, Tony. Thank you.
Great use of time. Thank you.
Mhm.